our exciting Tableview application that deals with animals from the zoo, which my son loves, by the way.
Yeah.
He's like, every day I come home, he's like, did you do anything fun today?
So that's what you're doing to us. You're making us do things that will entertain Mom.
Well, if he's not entertained, he's like, Daddy, you don't have fun with the students.
Oh,
right?
He cares about us.
So he's, exactly. Yes. Cool, okay. We're recording, the video started. What are we building? Currently, our application has 3 tabs. We've built the first 2 tabs. We've built tab number 1. Tab number 1 is a basic cell. It's not a custom cell. This is tab number 1. So on Friday, if we are building a basic cell, this is the code we're looking at for the first view controller. Tab number 2 builds a custom cell, right? No sections, only custom cells. Again, if this is Friday, where we're building custom cells, this is the tab we're looking at. The last tab is building upon custom cells plus sections, right? Custom cells plus sections. What does it look like? The end result will look very similar, right? Where we have the section header being amphibian, and we have one amphibian animal and a condor snake, right? Then we have birds in our bird section. Okay? Yes, sir. Is that a stretch or a question? No, go ahead. Okay. All right, cool. Let's keep building here. So we want to build out our third UI. Please feel free to go ahead. What we need a table view for our third view controller. Right? So our table view, we need a table view for our third view controller. We need a prototype cell. We need a reuse identifier. And we need to build out a custom cell. We have a custom cell class already. But we need to build out, meaning we need to drag in what we did earlier with the image view and the 3 labels. We need to do the same thing. So our cell looks very similar to our previous cell, right? Right? So the cells look very similar. It gives us extra practice building a custom cell. So the things we love, the constraints, right, Luba? We get to do it again. Same constraints, we get to do it again with our custom cell here. Cool? So this is what we're doing. Again, feel free to go ahead. We'll go to the storyboard. We'll go to our storyboard. We'll navigate to our third scene. We'll drag in a table view. So I'll go to my object library. I'll get a table view. My table view, the constraints will be, what's the constraints, Luba?
0, 0, 0, 0.
Look at that, you're an expert, you see that? Telling you, just practice. After the 10th time today. Well, no 10th time today. But that's what we talk about when we say the more you do it, the more it becomes part of you. After a while, you're doing the thing without typing. Right? Okay, so that happens. You never look at Xcode and it just works. You could go any place you want right now. You could do 2 types of cells, but we're not going to do Game of Thrones together. I see where you're going. I see where you're going, Luba. I see it. Very sneaky. All right, so my table view will be constrained top 0, leading 0, bottom 0, and trailing 0. So I have 4 constraints on my table view. Then I go to my attributes inspector for my table view. And my prototype cells, I increase that number to 1. For Luba, who's doing multiple cells, she'll increase it to 2. But for us, we have 1. Okay?
Alex, are we going to be using the same custom cell for this one as well?
Yes. Same custom cell that we created earlier. So the same animal cell that's Swift, we'll be using that again. All right, cool. So let's keep going here. Next up, please don't forget this step. Click on your cell and give it a reuse identifier. Give it a reuse identifier. Here we'll use the same animal cell. Right? We could use the same animal cell across different view controllers. They're different. Everybody with me? All right. Cool. Great. So now we get to lay out our cell. Say that again, sorry. Oh, we created it earlier, right? This view controller was called Animal Sections View Controller. This time, what's that? The identifier, I call it Animal Cell. This time, we'll just lay our cell differently. We'll put our image on the right side, okay? It's okay because different view controllers. It won't, there's no conflict. You could call it a different cell name, but the identifier is only being used in that view controller. So in all three view controllers, we created the same identifier name. One doesn't conflict with the other. They're different view controllers.
Are we allowed to use the same class on both?
Yeah, we are. You should. That's part of object-oriented programming, where you get to reuse your classes. That's a perfect case there.
So if you have two cells,
We'll come into that later. Right now, there's no way for us to do it, right? But for Game of Thrones, you could have two cells. But your question, I answered in a different way. Right now, we'll create a next cell, which we have already. But later, we'll be able to see what's known as a zib, create a view where we could use it in different view controllers, right? But we haven't gotten there yet, right? Where we could have a view we created already, cell, and we could reuse it different places. Everybody with me? So I'll have like an animal cell view that I could reuse in different view controllers. Because right now we're about to recreate something that we created before. Everybody with me? All right. But to make it look different, we'll actually make the cell different. So we'll make the image in the right corner. All right, so let's go ahead and get an image view. Get an image view. Where do we go to change the height of the cell? You eat more than me. You eat like all the time. What? Okay, where do we go to change the height of the cell? Size inspector. I'm sorry, say it again. The cell, the height of the cell. The height of the cell, I want to change it. Instead of like dragging it, I want to change the height of the cell. I go to the size inspector. Anything you want to change as far as like width, height, size inspector. So go to the size inspector and change the height to 140. Julia? For the cell. So click on the cell and go to the size inspector. And here it says, make sure your cell is selected. It doesn't let you, it's 154 here. 140 we said, right? We did it down there because let's get access to it down there. So if you click on it, you need to change the, let's see, attributes inspector, custom cell, and go to size inspector. Change it to 140. We'll come back to changing it down there later. But for now, the only thing we want to change is the row height to 140. Again, big question. Does that row height affect what we see when we run the application? I'm sorry? No, it doesn't. Keep that in mind. It doesn't change the height of the row unless we do UI Tableview Delegate and we return 140.
So what's the purpose of having this?
For visually, what we're working on, the design, so what we say in design is exactly what we have in code. So we'll mimic the 140. We'll set the constraints to 140 width, so it looks exactly the same. Cool? It's like it's visualizing where you're headed. All right, so next step, let's go ahead and set up our image view. Whoa. Set up our image view. You don't want to, attributes inspector, get my image view. What's the image view? Image view. If you find it difficult to get your elements, use the document outline, okay? Sometimes it's harder to get elements, just use the document's outline. So for now, we set the right side, right? And nobody's stopping me? Okay. We set in the top to 0, we set in the bottom to 0, and it's going to be 140 width. So let's go ahead and set the constraints for the image. I'm actually doing the second one for you too, Luba. I'm just not adding them together. Right? Because, again, that's Game of Thrones, right? Going back to your question.
So you said the top is 0?
Yeah, so if we click on Add New Constraints, the top is 0, trailing is 0, bottom is 0, and the width, pay attention here, change the width to be 140 points. So we're adding 4 constraints for the image. Yes? The width is 140, so it's a square, right? Because the height we return is going to be 140. You can make the width longer, it's up to you. But for now, we just have a square image. Okay? So the width 140, top 0, trailing 0, bottom 0. We add 4 constraints. Great. Next up, let's get our 3 labels. So let's go ahead and get our labels. So I have 1 label, I option drag a 2nd label, and I option drag a 3rd label. My first label is animal name, right? Animal name. What's our 2nd label? What was it? Origin or classification? Classification. Get in the habit of just naming your labels so it's easier for you to recognize what it is. So we have 3 labels here. Let's go to Attributes Inspector and change the font as we're here. So I'll go to Attributes Inspector for my animal name. I will navigate to the font area. I'll click on the font style. I'll click here and I'll go to change my text styles. I'll change it to headline. Again, this is making sure that your app adheres to accessibility. This is for accessibility. Get in the habit of making your app accessible. So here it's headline for the name. For classification, it's going to be subheadline. And for my origin, it's going to be subheadline. Great. So now we just set the constraints. What should I set the constraints for animal name? Luba? What's the constraints for my animal name? Top. So let me get access to my, Luba is going to tell us what to do here. So for the top, what is it? 8.
Bottom, no, left.
So leading, right?
Yeah, 8
And the trailing 8, right? Everybody agree? Right, so we'll add those 3 constraints on the label. Add 3 constraints. Yulia, what's my classification? I want to set constraints for my classification. What am I doing?
the same. Top 8.
So top 8, leading 8, trailing 8. And we add 3 constraints. Great. David, I want to add constraints for my origin label. So what's the leading value? 8, right?
Can you choose between top and bottom? There's only
Yeah, we only did 3, but we want to tie it to the bottom.
okay, bottom 8 and then,
But yeah, you can feel free to do that if you want. Cool, so we added 3. Really feel free to, like we saw some demos yesterday and we'll see more demos as you guys demo. You saw what we're able to build already. We're barely 8 weeks into the program. So anything that infuses you, right? Anything you engage with, build the thing. It breaks, ask for help. It breaks, ask for more help, right? Keep building. Have different constraints. Look at the apps you use. Try to make the constraints based on those apps. We've seen table views already. Try to make your cells. We see custom cells. Try to make the cells look like the cells that you see, right? Cool. So here we have constraints We set all our constraints. Now let's go ahead and get access to our assistant editor. Get access to your assistant editor and option click on your animal cell. Option click on animal cell. That's going to bring up our animal cell here, right? Currently, we see they're connected. They're connected. They're connected to our previous view controller. Everybody with me? I have my animal cell. It's connected already to my previous view controller. But I still have to connect it to that new view controller which we created, right? Do we all have access to our animal cell in the assistant editor? So now we'll click and we'll go connect our animal image view. Cannot click yet. Let's make sure that we have, did we change the class name? I don't think we've changed it yet. We haven't, we need some more pieces in the puzzle. Click on your cell. Click on your cell and make sure you go to the identity inspector. For the cell, click on your cell for the last view controller. Go to the identity inspector and make sure your class doesn't say UI table view controller cell, but it says what cell? Animal cell. So here we need to add in animal cell. Make sure to press enter, right? Do we have an identifier? No, we don't. Amini, you're not helping us here. I gotta blame somebody. Okay, so identifier. What's our identifier?
We did have an identifier.
We did?
Yeah.
Why don't I have one? Ah. Oh, I see you. All right. Okay. There's an assessment on Friday. I could just hand in a different assessment for a particular person. All right, so we have our animal cell. Perfect. Cool. Great. So our cell is connected. Is it? Not yet. Not mine. Image view to image view. Animal label to animal name. Animal origin to animal origin. And animal classification to animal classification. Were we all able to do that? Were we all able to do that?
What was the class again for this one?
Animal cell. Yeah. Questions? Okay, let's go have fun in our last view controller. So let's go to our last view controller, which is called Animal Sections View Controller. Mr. Adan has completed his last view controller. Awesome job, buddy. Okay, again, this is the third iteration for the day. So by the end of the day, we should get closer to knowing how to set up a table view. Okay, let's go. So we have an IB outlet. We're creating our table view. And here we have a table view. Awesome. We need to get our extension on our view controller to conform to, what are we conforming to? Shania, what are we conforming to here? UI view table? UI table view data source, right? Okay. So we conform to UI table view data source. We have to implement its two methods. The first one is number of rows. Number of rows return 0 for now. And cell for row, we need to get a cell. Let's go ahead and get a cell. So the cell we get it is not a built-in cell, right? So we need to get a custom cell from our table view. So tableview.dequeue reusable cell. Our identifier is animal cell for the current index path. And here we typecast. We typecast to the type we expect. The type we expect is an animal cell. And we will crash our app if we do not get the cell we want. So here couldn't dequeue an animal cell. So we have our animal cell. We need to get the object or get the animal at the current index path. I'll return my cell. I'll build my code, make sure we have no errors. And we have some more steps to do. So this time our data is different. This time, the third time, right, our data is different. The first two instances, we had a flat array. Do we agree? We had an animals array. This time, we'll actually use our sections method that we created earlier. We'll use our array of arrays method that we created earlier to get us an array of arrays. Because our table view now will need an array of arrays to create the sections. So let's go ahead and set up our data. What does our data look like? So here we have data for the table view. We'll simply call it animal classifications. And what does it look like? It's an array of arrays of ZooAnimals. Right? And here we have a did set like we did before. And why do we have the did set? Because we want to call our table view and reload the data when the animal classification property has changed. Great. We'll create our load data, Mr. Eric. And yes, we don't need too many use cases of it here, but you might have a use case where you want to use load data more than once. So we'll encapsulate load data in its own helper function. So here we say animal classifications, and we assign it this property. We assign it an array of arrays that we get from our ZooAnimal struct. How do we access it? We have a method that we created this morning called classification sections. And if we option click on animal classifications, we have an array of arrays. Great. Any questions? Before I go down, make sure to set your table view data source to self. And also for the height of rows, set your delegate to self. For using height for row at. No, we haven't yet. We will. That's why we have an error right now. Say that again? Oh, and make sure that we thank you. Your assessment is back to regular assessment. So Amini says, make sure to call load data, right? So make sure before you come to us and you say, oh, there's no data in my table view, make sure you have load data getting called in your view did load. If it's not getting called, your animal classifications will never get any value. Yes, sir?
Sorry, can you explain why we're making this a delegate again and not just a data source?
Oh, I guess let's go to, so the delegate has methods on it. One of the methods happened to be called height for row at. That method returns a height for the row.
Okay, so we're just using it for like that specific instance.
For now. There's more places where we'll need it. Like as we go into unit 3, there's other delegate methods we'll need. Because right now we're only using prepare for segue to segue from A to B.
So we're only really calling those things to have access to their function.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. There's more delegate methods like did select row at. So there's a delegate method on the table view that gets called when the user clicks on a row, right?
And why are we using height for row at in this?
To return 140, because right now our layout is based on 140 points, and currently it's going to return 44 points by default.
Okay.
The row height of a table view by default is 44 points. And there's no place right now we're explicitly saying return 140 points. We did it in Interface Builder, but that does not equate to code. Okay? Other questions?
For the cell for row, we're supposed to.
I think we have more stuff to do. Yeah, we have more stuff to do there.
I just wanted to be sure that we're returning with the cell.
Yes, we are. Other
We
questions?
do the same cell because we drew we connected it to this new table view entry.
Well, first of all, we get in a cell using the identifier that we created, that we identified the cell as,
Right.
and we casting it to the cell that we created earlier, the custom cell.
Right.
That's why we're able to return the cell here. And that cell is an animal cell. Matt, you have one more question?
Yeah, I did. I forgot it now. We're only using the height thing right now because we're trying to specify a consistent height.
Exactly.
So if it was like variable
Like yesterday, we do not need that. Exactly. So Matt's question again, or Matt's observation is, yesterday we did self-resizing cells. We did not use the delegate height for row at. Everybody. For today, we're making an explicit height, so we have to use the delegate height for row at method. Okay? So we have a lot of tools now in our toolbox. We know how to create self-sizing rows, where it grows by itself. And we also know how to return a specific height for a cell. Yes? Objection? Overruled. What's that, sir? Okay. Sure? All right. Let's see. Yesterday I slacked out the UI Tableview Delegate for us, and I know we probably saw it and said, right? So I know it's a lot of resources getting thrown at us. But part of it is seeing what the UI Tableview Delegate is, right? Methods for managing selections. Everybody? Methods for managing selections. Configuring. Keyword. Configuring section headers and footers. What does that mean? If you want the height of the header to grow, that's what you want to call one of those methods on the delegate. And footers. Deleting and reordering. We'll take a look at what that looks like tomorrow. You want to be able to delete stuff too, right? And performing other actions in a table view. Actions, right? Actions. Give me the height of my row. Make it taller. Make the height of my header taller. Those are actions, right? Something is happening. So, again, it's a protocol, right? A protocol just lists the methods. It doesn't implement it. Like, cell for row is not implemented by the protocol. We have to implement it. Everybody with me? It gives us the definition of what the thing is. It gives us access to the parameters. It gives us access to the table view. It gives us access to the index path. But the implementation, the logic, it's up to us. Okay? That's what a protocol does. It lists, it templates out what the thing is. But the contents of it is up to us. Overview. Look, use the methods of this protocol to manage the following features. Create and manage custom headers. Specify custom heights. Look at that, right? Specify custom heights for rows, headers, and footers. That's not the data source. Everybody with me? The data source is responsible for giving data. So for row at, right? Number of rows, number of sections, title for, all that is data, right? Everybody with me? So the table view has two protocols. It has a delegate and it has a data source. Think of data source as the data source. That was a good name that Apple picked out. Give them credit for that. Indent the row content. If you want to indent your content, this is where you go. Respond to row selections. We spoke about did select. So anytime you see like did select, will select, those are delegate methods, an action, right? Respond to swipes. Somebody's about to swipe something. What does that look like? Right? They're about to delete. Support editing. I want to edit. I want to move my rows around. We could see what that looks like tomorrow. And those are the topics here. Will display, shoot spring. There's a lot. It's a beautiful thing. Did select. We'll come used to using did select to segue, right? So when we start doing programmatic views, we'll be using did select a lot. Where the user did select something as opposed to using prepare for segue. All right. Going down, providing custom headers here. We have view for header. I could return my custom header, right? If I have my custom view header I want to return, Here we have providing header, footer, and row heights. Everybody? The one we used today was height for row. Height for row, ask the delegate for the height to use for a row in a specified location. Right? So this is UI Tableview Delegate. Right? We read it yesterday, right? That's what the mini said. All right, cool. Let's go back here and keep coding. All right, let's set up our extension for our delegate. So extension for our delegate on the animal UI Tableview Delegate. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. Don't worry. We're not done yet. We're gonna be done before we. Okay. So much chatter. So much chatter.
Give him midday check-ins.
This guy's worrying about midday check-in.
I just.
Mr. Antonio, let Matt be less worried about the midday check-in. It moved to tomorrow.
Oh.
We haven't done editing cells unless you want to do it before that.
No, I'm good.
Okay, it's good. Okay, what function are we after here? Yes. You can put a comma. So Andy's question was, can we just put a comma after data source? Why are we not going to put a comma there?
So that won't be as listed.
So what?
Won't be as listed. It's separate your.
Separate. You might have more methods in there. You start off with one, you're like, that's okay. Before you know it, you have 5 methods there tied up with your data source. Right? Cool? So no matter how small it is, start small, because the thing will grow. I promise. Okay, so here, what method are we after? Height for row. So I start typing height for row, I press enter, and we are returning 140. Great. So we are done with the delegate method here. Let's go complete our number of rows in section. What am I returning for number of rows in section here? Animal classifications are count. Do we agree? Yes, we agree, right? What type of table view are we working with? All right. I like how people pull back. What do we need? We need the section, right? So here we need to get access first to the section. The section will return its count. So here we need access to the section. Why do we need access to the section, Amini? Why are we doing this and not just like classifications that count? Because it's an array of arrays, so each array knows its count. Yes, sir.
Okay, so what's the difference? So then, if this is the animal classification, it is matrix.
Yes.
We just need to count of
Inner array.
all its okay.
No, that's fine. That's good. Of each inner array. And each inner array gets called according to the table view. Every time it gets to that section, it calls it, it gets the count, it populates the section.
Technically, if you just do animal classification, that count, that's like when we was one, no?
In our case here, no, it's going to give us more than one. And before you know it, our app will crash, index out of range.
Well, why would it give us more than one if it's an array of arrays and we only have one array?
Oh, sorry, it will give us one. You're right, sorry. My mistake, sorry. It will give us one, right? Which again is not the correct count.
No.
Okay? All right, so here we all agree that we are saying section not count. Anybody want us to go over that again and why?
No, but, okay, so we say section because section is a given, there is a given label.
Yes, we have it from our beautiful protocol method. Say that again? Oh, if we just say classifications that count? Classifications that count is 1. Right? Okay, so any other questions before we move on? Any other questions before we move on? Actually, does it return 1? It doesn't return 1. It returns 5 or whatever the number is.
Why would it be 5 if it's,
Because we have 5 buckets.
but it's an array of arrays? How many?
Yeah, but how many arrays are in that array of arrays?
We have one array of arrays.
But how many arrays in that array of arrays? How many elements in it? If you go back, hold 1 second. This is also important here. If we go back to our ZooAnimal, here. How many? This is one array, correct? How many elements is in that array?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
What's the count of that array?
Oh, that would be 5.
Right? So that's what we're doing with classifications.
Bar section would be array. Oh, of that array. But the count in this one was.
Yes.
so you have to
Yes.
draw.
Exactly.
Oh.
Everybody, before we move on.
How do you do the section then?
I'm sorry?
So then the count when you section will be that you'll be adding the amount of each section.
Yes.
So like 3 plus 4 plus 5.
It doesn't add. It doesn't add. So I ask, for example, if the first ZooAnimal array has one element, the count will be 1
Of that.
for that section.
Right.
If my second ZooAnimal array has 3 elements, the count will be 3.
So it doesn't, okay, so when you do the count, you're not looking for a total count.
No. For the count of that particular array, of that section.
Okay.
Right? So for our example, if we look at for this particular here, so amphibian, the count will be 1. Do you see my amphibian cell? Do you see the section here, amphibian? Can we all see
So
the?
what would be the count if it is just animal classification.count
It will be the amount of sections we have.
in total?
Yes,
Okay.
which would be 5, I think, right? Based on what we had earlier today. Everybody? Any questions about that? Any questions? Yes. No, not fast. We were going to show understanding. Like we have to understand where we were before we go forward. But now we're going to go back to the code. Okay? All right. Cool. So this is where you are. Do we understand this line of code again? Here. Mr. One, explain to me what are we doing on line 36?
Array of animal classifications in determinants section.
Each sections count. That's what's really important. Each sections count. This gets called on each sections count. How many animals do you have? Right? Yes, Chelsea.
So the section, that's like the index of the animal classification?
Yes, exactly. This is the index. Very good, Chelsea. So here, every time section gets count for 0, it returns 1 in our case. For 1, it might return 3 or whatever amount of animals we have. Okay? Very good. All right, so let's keep moving on. Yeah. Mel, what are you missing? The top is our classifications property. Yes, sir.
So are fatal errors like Swift?
Yes.
That's something that's okay to put in if the code should never run like that.
Yes, exactly. You don't want to ship code where your cell is broken.
Okay. 'Cause
Right.
I mean, in the past with like the optionals, for example, crashing was like even if it was like a really obscure chance of it happening, crashing was like a bad thing.
Crashing with a force unwrapping is a bad thing if you don't know what that value is going to be.
Don't know what that value. So only if you're aware.
Intentionally, yes. Like in our case here, we want to crash intentionally because we need to have an animal cell there in order for our code to render correctly. Right? And if we have anything but an animal cell, crash the app. Okay? So we could fix what that is. It might be we forgot something in our reuse identifier in Storyboard. So that's like a developer fix.
Okay.
Right? There's no way in production when I ship that code, it will crash there. Got me?
Yeah.
Cool. It's not like somebody changes the data on a web server, for example, and you force unwrap expecting to get that person's image, and they deleted the image. So if you force unwrap there, that's going to crash.
Okay.
Right? We'll see more instances of use cases there, but for now, crash intentionally here. All right, cool. Let's keep going. So get the animal at the current index path. And who's telling me how to get the animal? Who's hiding there? Majid, how do we get access to the animal on line 45? So I have let animal. I started it. How do we get access to our animal object? A next hint, we're using an array of arrays. May, how do we get access to the animal? Our data is called, well, go ahead. How do we get access to animal? I want to get access to the animal at that current index path. So animal classifications dot. I want to get access to the object using the index path. Index path dot row. And if we option click on animal, what is that? It's an array. So we're not done. We're not done. This does not give us what we want. Because remember, we have an array of arrays. Dot section, right? So dot section. And then index path dot row. Everybody got that? So now if we option click on animal, we have a ZooAnimal. This is what we want. Okay? So really pay attention. When you have an array of arrays, you use index path dot section to get that inner array. And then in that inner array, you use dot row to get the element that you need. Okay? Now we have our animal. Let's keep going. So you could go ahead. Yeah, you good. You're a rockstar. Next, we'll go ahead and configure the cell. How do we configure the cell? We did it earlier. Yes, this is all part of beautiful code. When you write the code correctly, you could use the things you had before. We're not reinventing the wheel. So what's that other function we had before? How do we access it? So cell.configure, right? And we pass in the animal. That's it. We're great. We're able to reuse our cell. Okay, cool. So right now we have the two required protocol methods on a data source. But we are dealing with sections. You're dealing with sections, you need two other methods. They're not marked required, but in order to render your cells correctly with the sections, you need those two methods. So actually, let's separate our code a little bit. So here I will say mark required table source, table view, data source, methods. So as we use that mark here, we'll get like a pragma mark, right? So as we see, like we separated the code here somewhere, required methods, right? Everybody? Can we see what we just did? So by marking something with mark explicitly, it separates like the way you use the jumper. Okay, so here we have mark required, table source methods, and after our cell for row, we'll use a next mark, a pragma mark, to say methods needed to implement sections. And Mel will give me one of those methods required to implement sections in our table view. Why is she what? Oh, she has errors. Maybe her lunch probably was. Mr. David, help your fellow with the errors there on the machine as you work through yours. Lilia, give me one of those required methods for our sections. title for section, right? Just title for section. That's great. Title. So we say title for section. And be careful again. It's title for header, not title for footer. Everybody? Title for header. So title for header, we need to return some string value or nil. So we need to return some string value. So how do we get access to that string value? We have our animal classifications. We have the current section that's being called. The section here is coming from our section parameter here. So section dot first gets us the first animal. And on that first animal, we say, get me back your classification name. And this is a great method because right now we're not unwrapping anything. I like that method. Whoever wrote that, I need to take them to lunch. Because here we don't have to use no nil coalescing or anything because string optional, right? It does the unwrapping itself. Awesome, love it. What's the next method we need? Number of, Christian? Number of sections. We need to know how many sections our table view has. So here we have number of sections, right? And here, Tiffany, we could return animal classifications.count. And this is approximately 5, right? Right? So here you can return how many sections you have. If I have 5 classifications, I have mammal, I have amphibian, right? Reptile. That is the count of that. Any questions about number of sections?
Oh, so for rows, the number of rows in the section, then you inside.
The section, yeah. Exactly. Very good. Any questions? Please, this is review week. We don't have a review day. We have a review week. Everything we build is review. So you called footer instead of header. That's why I stopped there for a second. So make sure it says title for header and not title for footer. Cool, Eric? All right, very good. All right, it's getting harder by the second. I need to wrap up. Somebody's trying to kill me again. Yes? Oh, we did that a while back, right?
Yeah, but I forgot
We simply just printed out what the connect in the video load. We simply printed out what animal classification was. In video load. Oh, dump. Yeah, dump and the object name. In parentheses. What's that? We'll fix the image constraints later. Okay, can we continue? We're so close. Let's continue. So we first need to connect our table view, get access to your storyboard. Get access to your storyboard, open up your assistant editor, and connect your table view scene over to your view controller. So get access to your assistant editor. Yes, sir. What? You could do that. Like anything like that, that's those little, yeah. You could create an image for your tab. So Christian's question was, our third tab doesn't have an image and it doesn't have a title. Right? We know how to create that, right? Luba smiles. She did it already. Okay. So let's connect our table view to our scene. Make sure we connect. All right. So connect that. What else we're missing here? Let's run the code and see what breaks. We wrote a lot of code here. Again, this is bad practice, what I'm doing. Run your code frequently, right? Don't write 100 lines of code and then run your app. Okay? So now let's go ahead and run our application. Run your app. And let's see what we have in our third tab. Wow, look at that. I think this works. It's almost like we did not do anything. It's like, really. Okay, the next thing we need to do to make it look prettier is set the aspect fill, like we did earlier. So set the aspect fill for your image. Right now the image is aspect fit. So it's not taking up the entire frame of my image view. So go to your attributes inspector for your UI image and set it to aspect fill. Yes, Tiffany?
I do have a question. Where is the logic that we changed?
The line that we
That we
changed.
changed the, like where, like how the sections are filled in?
Okay, we'll let's review that, but first make sure that you say aspect fill here, and we will continue on. So make sure for your image view, make sure it's aspect fill. So click on your image view. Click on your image view, go to aspect fit, change it from aspect fit to aspect fill. Great. Now run your app again. So basically we have Game of Thrones for you, Luba, in 2 different tabs. You put them together, you get your cells. You're almost done with that. Look at you. All fresh. Okay, so let's go to our third tab. And here, we have our cell rendering correctly. Okay? Mr. Christian, we could add the item, we could update the item image and the item title. We'll do that, and we'll wrap up lecture. So let's go ahead, final item, let's update our tab, because now our tab, we have a subtitle cell, we have our custom cell, but our third tab is our custom cell sections. So let's update that title and give it an image of 3. Okay? Let's go ahead and do that. So click on your third item, and let's edit our third item. So our third item, the title, we'll call it custom cell sections. Okay? Or just call it sections. Maybe sections is just better. Just call it sections here. And for our image, we'll use 3-dot circle. Right? Cool. So press enter here, run our application. Any questions about sections? And please, I encourage us to go do our Game of Thrones sections after lecture. So now we have, to review what we've done so far, we have our first tab, which uses a basic cell. Right? Basic cell, no custom cell. Basic UI table view cell. Right? Our second tab makes use of a custom cell. We created an animal cell. We gave it 3 labels, an image view. Our third tab, we have sections plus our custom cell. We're reusing our custom cell, animal cell, and we have our sections here. We have amphibian, we have bird, we have insect, we have mammal, right? We have reptile, right?
Oh,
Yes?
yes. What is the logic that splits up our section?
We did that this morning. First place we started in the model. We started in the model, we started in,
That's when we had to close
no closure. Yeah, we had a closure, yes. We had the sorted closure. We had many closures. So back in the classification sections in the model, in our ZooAnimal.swift, this is where we created the sections.
and that's a what is it?
A type method,
A type of.
right? Because we have our static func here, so it's a type method. And then we have our array of arrays getting returned. And we went through our flat array, we created our array of arrays, right? So this is where you start with Game of Thrones, right, Luba? Luba said she's done with that, she's over that. So see Luba for Game of Thrones. Any other questions before we end lecture? Tomorrow we'll conclude lecture by segueing. Again, a big part of Friday is being able to pass data. Everybody with me? So for tomorrow, we need to be able to pass data from view controller 1 to view controller 2. Right? So if you get bored between 6 p.m. and 10 a.m. tomorrow, feel free to go ahead and start it, right? Like Mr. Adandes does, right? So we want to be able to basically select an item. I want to be able to select my gorilla here and segue over to a next view controller that shows information about the gorilla. Everybody with me? And if you guys are good, maybe I show you UI scroll view, right? Depends on the day, right? Because some of the descriptions are pretty long, so we could do one of two things. We could put it in what's known as a text view that we've seen, right? But the UI that's not the way you want to go. The way you want to go is a UI scroll view, right? Where you scroll in the entire content, right? So the UI text view is okay for here, but not for production. Like you don't see an app with a text view scrolling through content. So based on time, right, we'll see if we do a UI scroll view or a UI text view. Everybody with me? And everything that scrolls inherits from what?
UI, text.
UI scroll view, right? If it scrolls, it inherits from UI scroll view. UI text view inherits from UI scroll view. UI table view inherits from UI scroll view. Right? Yeah.
So I do have,
Yes, last question of the day.
okay, so for the, we put the animal classification, we put the, group that classification, like we call the type method and low data.
I swear to God, you guys just increasing the temperature in this set. Man. Okay.
We would just, so low data.
Load data on all three.
So that's where we would call it, and that's what we call it in our view did low,
Yes.
and in our, okay, that's.
So make sure before you come to myself and Alan that you are calling load data.
Okay, yeah.
Even if you have the function, it doesn't call itself.
No.
I like how you, right? But please, before you come to us, make sure your load data is in your view did load. Make sure you have your data source set up, right? All those parts there, those are the checks. Like, is my data source checked? Yes. Is my load data getting called? Yes. Everybody? Cool? All right, so we'll conclude lecture here.